Hello, gorgeous. Welcome to HG Radio, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration. Here is your co-founder and host, Kim Becker.
Hello, gorgeous, and thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and this is Hello, Gorgeous, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration on Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. Our guest today is Jenna Benn Shersher. Jenna is a 38-year-old cancer survivor, creator, healer, civil rights advocate, world traveler, and tiny twister who dreams big. In December of 2010, Jenna was diagnosed with a rare blood disorder called gray zone lymphoma that at the time affected fewer than 200 people. Instead of surrendering to the cancer, she was determined to find meaning in her suffering. In the course of her fight, Jenna figured out creative ways to leverage social media to process her experience and in turn create a community that became invested in her fight. In the course of a year, Jenna battled cancer and founded the nonprofit organization Twist Out Cancer. Jenna's story was selected at a top 10 best read by Mashable. She has made television appearances on major media outlets including Forbes, CNN, and the New York Times, amongst others. She is a mentor angel with the Eimer Man Angels and was an honored hero and advocate for the Team in Training and the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. She was recently nominated as a health hero by Philadelphia Magazine. She is an ROI Fellow at Schusterman Foundation and serves on the board of the Anti-Defamation League. Jenna received her bachelor's degree from McGill University in Montreal, Canada, and her master's in social enterprise and administration from Columbia University. She resides in Philadelphia with her husband, Dr. David Shersher, and their daughter, Noah Pearl, who is a miracle. Hi, Jenna, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be able to share your story with our listeners. You are so inspirational that I'm very excited. Like I said, I think that what you do and what you've done and how you've taken your cancer diagnosis and turned it into something positive is just a story that people need to hear. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
So you were diagnosed with cancer. I always like being able to talk to women who have gone through the journey of cancer because I want to know about the diagnosis, because I feel like if we share the diagnosis, there are so many times that maybe someone is battling with something, but they're just kind of blowing it off, and hearing someone else's story may prompt somebody to have something checked out that they otherwise wouldn't have checked out. So tell me a little bit about your cancer diagnosis.
Yeah. So, back in 2010, when I was 29, so about 9 years ago now, I'm 38 now, I noticed that my body was sort of changing. Every couple of months, I was having sort of random mystery ailments. So it initially started in February of 2010, where I went into the hospital with what they thought was viral meningitis. Then after that, a couple months later, I went in with what they thought was a pinched nerve that seemed to resolve with a dose of steroids, and then came back a couple months later. And then shortly after Thanksgiving in 2010, I was going into my internist every couple of weeks with flu-like symptoms. So I was having fever, I was sleeping a ton. I also had about 10 pounds of weight loss in a month. And it was at that point when I started to get quite nervous about what was going on with my body. And finally, I went back to my physical therapist complaining about difficulty moving my head left and right, and then difficulty also with breathing, where I was getting this sort of sharp pain in my chest. And it was at that point where the PT said, we haven't done any imaging. We really should get some imaging done. So she ordered a CT scan, and very quickly they found a number of tumors that were located in my mediastinum, so in my chest area. And so the question was it actually cancer? Or was it, some other type of tumor? And within a couple of days, I had a cancer diagnosis. Not exactly clear on what the diagnosis was, but they knew that it was a type of blood cancer. And they looked and said, you're 29, you have a blood cancer, it's most likely Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, over the holiday season, it was really challenging to get into a physician, to an oncologist, because a lot of people were on vacation. And so it was during that time where here I was 29. I knew I had cancer. I didn't know what type of cancer or the course of treatment, but I knew that I really wanted to live, and I knew that I wanted to have life after cancer. And so before I even knew what type of cancer I had an appointment at the Oncofertility Consortium at Northwestern Hospital set up, where I met with their team of fertility experts who were able to explain to me what types of what steps I would need to take in order to preserve my fertility if there was time to be able to do it. So I sort of educated myself during that period of wait, and it really empowered me to be able to feel like I could envision life after cancer, not just for myself, but for the possibility of bringing life into the world. And it really changed the way that I battled cancer and the way that I dealt with the treatment moving forward. So yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. 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 I think part of with what you say and describing your cancer journey and being so young, nobody's immune. I think cancer touches everybody at every stage of life. It doesn't matter whether you're older or a woman or a man, but somebody your age, I'm sure that cancer was the last thing that you thought you would have to deal with at 29.
Yes, it was not on my radar at all. I mean, I was worried about, making sure that I was staying fit and going to the gym regularly. I mean, if I was to get sick, I would get sick 1 to 2 times a year. I was never the person that was kind of bedridden or dealing with any type of major illness. So it came out of nowhere and hit me like a ton of bricks. And I felt that I needed to use every skill and resource that I had available to try and manage it.
And so what was it like when you actually heard those words, "you have cancer"?
I mean, it was the worst day of my life, hands down. It was filled with fear. And I think, life as I knew it was forever changed. So, I can remember very clearly, being in my favorite childhood restaurant with my boyfriend at the time. And we had chosen that restaurant because I knew I wanted to be close to home in the case that I was going to get bad news. So it was about, a 7-minute drive from my family. And even when the call came in and I spoke to my internist on the phone, I was in such a state of denial that when she said, "You have cancer," I said, "Oh, that's good news." And she said, "Oh, I don't think you're hearing me." And it was like my brain just couldn't catch up, and honestly, I said to her, I would appreciate if you could just call my parents to tell them what's going on, because I can't communicate this to them.
Right.
And so when I drove home and I collapsed in the parking lot and just kind of had this out of body scream, because it was just so outrageous. It was so unbelievable to me to have to be dealing with this. And I was so terrified that the only thing I could do was scream.
Right.
So that's what I did. And then I got into the car and drove home. And when I saw my parents in the doorway, they were white as a ghost because they were on the phone with the doctor who was telling them what she had just told me. And so our lives as a family unit and also individually changed dramatically that day and have forever been impacted by those 3 words.
That's right. Well, you can't, and it can't not change you. And it just becomes a new normal, right? You can't go back. And all of these experiences, you just move forward, and you move forward with the experiences that you've learned. So one of the things that I've learned is that you want to know something about a disease, ask the person that has it. So what's the difference between a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and a gray zone lymphoma?
Yeah, well, so gray zone lymphoma is super rare. It's still, there might just be a couple hundred of us. I started a Facebook page, a group page, when I was sick because I couldn't find anyone at the time. And now I think we're 300 strong, and that also consists of caregivers that are caring for people with gray zone. So gray zone lymphoma isn't even a real name. It doesn't even have a real title. If you look it up, at the time, there was only a Wikipedia page that said that it has features of Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it means it looks like both. So it's this sort of in between. It's neither one or the other. In my case, I had a couple of proteins that were positive. So CD20 was one of them. And it meant that what they chose to do, because there was not a set regimen at the time, and I still believe that there isn't, is they treated me with a high dose leukemia regimen. So in a way, they over-treated my disease. So most non-Hodgkin's lymphoma patients are treated with a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma regimen. And in my case, they gave me the heaviest duty chemotherapy that they could, because they just didn't know enough about the disease, and they'd rather overtreat a young adult with this type of cancer than undertreat, because what they were seeing is that a number of patients with Hodgkin's lymphoma would relapse after a couple of years because they were undertreated. And then what it showed was that they actually had gray zone lymphoma and they were not given the right regimen. So in this weird way, as hard as it was to go through such a high dose chemotherapy with major implications of going through that, it did give me some assurance that because they were overtreating me, there would be less risk of having to come back and getting out of remission. So.
Wow. And so where are you? So you're 9 years out now of your cancer.
Out.
Great.
Yeah.
And so no, you're not on any medications or anything anymore, that you were able just to be awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's crazy to think.
I know, right?
So many. It was like I had trouble keeping track of how many meds I was on for, a good year and a half or so. And now to just be taking like fiber, it's just bizarre.
Right. That's awesome.
It really is. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I have a 17-year-old son. And so one of the things that I try to teach him is that life is truly 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Mm-hmm. And so why did you feel the need to start a nonprofit? Lord knows you had so much going on. But I find it inspiring because you took a situation that wasn't very pretty and you turned it into something that's beautiful for everybody. So what made you feel that you wanted to start a nonprofit?
Oh, that's very nice of you to say. I think, so it's not like I went into this, it's not like I was diagnosed and then said, I'm going to form a nonprofit. That's not how it happened. It was definitely not pretty for a while. So what I did was I started writing in a blog that was initially private, and then I turned it into a public blog because I had not intentionally, I had offended a number of family members and friends that I forgot to invite to the blog. So I opened it up, and it really was just a place initially to update family and friends with what I was doing. And then I turned it into a space where I could really cope and be really raw and vulnerable about my experience with this rare type of cancer. And what I found is that the more that I shared, the more the world opened up. And so the more vulnerable I was, the more that people were connecting with me and sharing their secrets and what they were going through. And I found it to be incredibly healing and therapeutic. And without knowing it, I was building this online community, not with any intention, not with any strategy. It was just happening. It was very organic. This was long before advertising and all these other worrying about algorithms. This was like, blogging in its purest form, where you'd put a post out and people would find you. And so what I found was that as I was blogging, I was building this community, and it was really the community that I was needing. At the time, there were not a lot of organizations out there that were focused on the emotional impact of a cancer diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And there were plenty of organizations out there raising critical funds for research. And I am alive and here today because of organizations like the Leukemia Lymphoma Society and the American Cancer Society that are doing incredible work. But what I found was that there weren't a lot of organizations out there that were getting really real about what it's like emotionally for the patient and also for the caregivers and supporters around them. And so as I built this online community, I started to wonder, was there something more that I could do to help other people? And so pretty soon after I finished treatment in May of 2011, I looked at what had happened and the online presence that I had developed, and I was really determined to do more with that. So midway through treatment, I put out a call to action asking for people to do the twist because that was the only dance move that I could do. I was a dancer. I had trained as a dancer for years. It was something that I did in my extracurricular time. And it was something that I had kind of stopped doing when I, finished college and entered the professional world. But it was still something that I really loved. But when I was sick, I didn't have the energy or the strength to dance. And I certainly could not go out to a dance club and dance with other people. I was pretty much confined to a hospital for, 6 days of inpatient treatment and then recovery. And so I was pretty isolated and immunosuppressed. And by putting out this call to action on YouTube and on Facebook, within a couple days, we had thousands of people that were twisting out cancer. And it was at that point that I realized that there was more to this community than my blog. And there was really a group of cheerleaders that were out there that were cheering me on that I didn't know existed. And so when I finished treatment, I really wanted to be able to pay it forward and to provide other people with the community that I built and craved and needed and felt that there was really a space for. So that's what I did.
Wow. And so you have a signature program, which is Brushes with Cancer. So tell us about that. Tell us about that particular program.
Yeah. So, I formed Twist Out Cancer in 2011. So in June of 2011, right after I had finished treatment. And it really was an online platform for people to connect, to share their experiences and to share their twist on cancer. So that's lessons learned, fighting strategies, new perspectives. But as I got better and as I was able to go out in the world and connect with people in real life, what became clear was that while the online piece was so important, so was the in-person piece. And it was like a world that I hadn't been a part of for over a year. And so we had initially designed the website to be this sort of call and response where people can upload their challenges or calls to action. And we had one girl who I had met through my oncologist named Anna Swarthout, and she also had gray zone lymphoma, and which was kind of rare that I was meeting another gray zoner in my area. And she had put out a call to action asking for people to create unique works of art, not using the shade of gray, because gray was all that she was seeing. She had studied art history, she was an artist, and she felt unable to create because she was managing so much. And within a couple of days, we had people all over the world that were creating art in her honor. And it got me thinking about just the important medium of the creative arts, of how could we use the creative arts as a mechanism for healing. And in a similar way, dance and writing was so instrumental to my own healing. And for Anna, it was this desire to be able to create again that she so craved. And so when I saw the response online, I then turned to our board members and I said, I think there's something more here. And I think we need to shift our mission and our work. And it should no longer be just about our online presence and call to action, but it really should be about using the creative arts for healing. And so Brushes with Cancer was inspired by Anna. And Brushes with Cancer is a 4-month program where we match people touched by cancer that we call inspiration. So that could be survivors, anyone that's heard those 3 words, you have cancer, you've survived that experience. It could be previvors, so people that are genetically predisposed to cancer. And it could also be caregivers, our unspoken heroes that often don't have a place at the table. So we match them with artists that we believe in, that we think are ready to participate in this program. And they go through a high screening process, application process, and we match up the artists and inspirations as a team, so together. And they are mentored by clinical social workers and psychologists and art therapists. And once they go through this sort of 4-month period of the inspiration opening up about their experiences with cancer, the artist is then charged with creating a unique work of art reflective of that person's journey. And we have these big art exhibitions and galas that celebrate life and storytelling and the hard and the resilience and the beautiful and the ugly. And it really is just all about being honest and open and vulnerable. And we've been doing this now since 2012. And so we had our 7th annual program in Chicago, but over the last 7 years, we've impacted over 30,000 people through this program in Chicago, Philadelphia, Tel Aviv, Montreal, Toronto, Detroit, and Austin. So it's been a
Wow. Well, and how wonderful that you took something that was kind of gloom and doom, when you get that cancer diagnosis, and you turned it into something that's just absolutely beautiful. And it's art. And everybody, well, most people, I think, can really appreciate art. And the story that goes behind that is incredible. That's just incredible.
Thank you.
So what's your favorite story? Is there a favorite story of a survivor through brushes with cancer that kind of resonates with you that really touches your heart?
Oh, we have so many, honestly. But I will say, so I'll share two. So my sister Neely is actually a clinical social worker, and she was a caregiver for me. And she has obviously watched Twist evolve and grow. And I had her participate 3 years ago, and she was matched with a girl named Megan Milano. So Neely was serving as an artist, but also as a caregiver. And she is what we call an urban explorer. So she photographs abandoned buildings, and she always was just photographing these buildings and trying to tell the stories that were left behind. And it was the first time that she brought someone actually into the space. And she brought Megan in, and Megan had recently lost her mother, who was a breast cancer survivor. She had recently passed, and her father was diagnosed with ALS shortly after that. So this was a young woman who had been through a lot. And Neely ended up bringing Megan into an abandoned theater and had her wear her dress that Neely had worn to my wedding. And she
Wow.
photographed her in this space. And it was this beautiful healing process that happened for both of them, where Neely had never been able to really publicly deal with my own illness and was grappling with the impact that it had had on her. She was able to use her artistic talents to be able to then empower Megan to feel like she had a voice and could stand up on stage and publicly own her story. And it was just beautiful to see their collaboration and to see their friendship and to see how their connection really helped each of each other heal in the process. So I would say that's one of my favorites. It's also very personal. And then the other is that we had August Spree, who is a soft tissue cancer survivor. She was matched with Brad Young, and Brad was a woodworker out of Michigan, and August was based in Chicago and had 3 kids and actually was diagnosed when she was pregnant. And they connected so well that they fell in love. And August actually moved to Michigan and is raising her boys with Brad. And this is years later. So that is not the intention, obviously, of the program, is to create a love connection. But it's something that we feel really good about because they both have been incredibly involved with the organization. They love one another. And I think it just shows you what can happen when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and to be heard and to put your story into someone else's hands.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how can our listeners learn more about Twist Out Cancer, and how can they become involved in your organization?
Well, you can go to twistoutcancer.org and learn all about our programs. Everything is up there and is updated regularly. We also have a pretty strong social media following and try to put updates out on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. So follow it, and Twitter, of course. Follow us online. We are going to be launching Brushes with Cancer applications in Chicago and in Austin for 2020. So please, if you live in those areas, but also even if you live out of state, we definitely still are able to match participants from all different types of locations. That's the beauty of, technology, where we feel like technology can bring people together no matter where they're at in their life and where they live. So we will be launching those applications in the next month or so. So definitely stay tuned for that and join our newsletter.
Awesome. Well, we are almost out of time, so I want to say thank you so much, Jenna, for being my guest today. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us.
Oh, thank you, Kim. It's been an honor. And I think the work that you're doing is tremendous.
Oh,
Truly.
thank you. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or comments or would like to know more about the guests on our show, feel free to contact me at kbecker@hellogorgeous.org. If you want to know more about Hello Gorgeous, go to the website www.hellogorgeous.org. And we invite you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and download our mobile app. Thank you for joining me today on Hello Gorgeous, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and until next time, stay gorgeous.
Another beautiful day, walking in the sunshine, spending the time with you. Last night we had a good time, dancing in the moonlight and loving the night away. I can't imagine what it'd be like. I can't imagine what it'd be like. I can't imagine what it'd be like without you. I can't imagine that.